Hemshech Ayin Beis, Volume 1, we're up to chapter 119 on page Reish Lamed 230. So let me summarize. It's quite dense. Ayin Beis is the story of the interface between the divine and existence, which are fundamentally antithetical to each other in every possible way. Now, in the most basic way for us, it's finite and infinite, but it's also about self-absorption versus selflessness, truth versus reality, spirit versus matter, and the list goes on. So, being that, according to Torah, God wants to have a relationship with us, a relationship entails that there is commonality. A relationship also entails that there's a way for the two to speak to each other, communication. Thus, we have an elaborate system that God put into place. This was called Seder Shtalshlus, cosmic order. And tools, methods, and instruments for us to climb the ladder in this elaborate structure to reconnect even these two antithetical realities. Now, this process God obviously also used to create, which is the key to the whole thing, because if God didn't use it to create, then it's only for us, where are we going? A ladder has to go two directions. So in explaining the whole process, and I'm just really summing up the whole Hemshech right now, to where we are from the beginning, the Rabbi begins. Ayin Beis is a very elaborate discussion. It's not one maimer, it's hundreds of maimer. The only Hemshech that goes that long. The Rebbe Marash was the first to actually introduce the concept of a Hemshech, which means a series of discourses. Until then, it was only single discourses. The Alter Rebbe said a maimer on a Shabbos. He may have said something, a follow-up to explain it, but it was all that way. And the Chassidim themselves and the scholars went and put together all the Mamorim, and they understood the bigger picture. The Rebbe Marash was the first to actually create a flow of a series that went sometimes for a year, half a year, a few months, a few weeks. And the Rebbe Rashab also did it, but the two big ones are Samach Vov, that extended for 3 years, and 61 discourses, and Ayin Beis, which did for 5 years, extends for 144 discourses. He didn't even finish it. And the third section, which he didn't even deliver, was just written. And he basically wrote it almost to the end of his life, based on we see from the different notes that he wrote later. The point I might make is this is why he's called the Rambam Chassidus, because he didn't just take a piece of the puzzle, a piece of the picture, he gave us the whole picture. And when you start learning, you really see that. You really see how he's taking literally section, like the Rambam does. If you learn Gemara, laws of Shabbos, there's no way you're going to find it just in Masechta Shabbos. You know Masechta Shabbos, then suddenly a discussion in Masechta Nida, or Masechta this one, Masechta that one, they suddenly talk about Shabbos. So the Rambam came and codified it and gathered it together. The Rambam, the Rosh. So the Rebbe Rashab does similarly. He doesn't do it in halachas like Hilchas Shabbos, Hilchas Kashrus, and Hilchas Kedushin, and so on. But he does it, and therefore it's a whole picture. So how does he explain this interface? He begins with understanding the difference between what's called Makif and Pnimi, or we call Keser and the Spheres. Because a key component in the cosmic order is, besides the world, is that each world has 10 spheres. And each 10 spheres, there's the Keser, which is like the crown. So the Keser in our language is, the first interface is called the desire. God's desire to create. That's a first step away from the essence of the divine. They now desire something outside of his essence, so to speak, outside conceptually, not spatially. And then begin the spheres, which are the actual instruments. So if there's no desire of an undefined essence to want to have a defined existence, you don't have an existence. You have no way to retrace the steps. If there's a desire, but there are no actual stepping stones, you also have no way to get back. So Kesser is the desire, which is called Makif, it's a transcendent energy, and then come the 10 spheres, which are immanent energy. So think of it like God that's beyond undefined reality chose to become an artist. That artist chose a certain particular art called existence. And then he has a paintbrush and a palette and a canvas upon which he creates this. Now the palette and the canvas, all that is also part of the creation. That's called Kalim. And the air is the energy that is flowing in to actually shape and define each part of the structure. We end up in this world with all the concealments only with the end product. So we see the tip of the iceberg. And what we do is begin to unveil the shrouds and try to see what's inside. And we climb very slowly. We can start realizing, there's a little energy in here. That energy leads me to the next step. You start climbing the ladder of the worlds, going through to more sublime levels, till you come to realize that there's the complexity of what is behind this design, till you realize that God is an artist that could have made many types of art, till you realize that God is not even an art, can't be even defined as an artist, until you realize he can't even be defined, period. But that you cannot really appreciate until you go through all these layers, because we begin from the bottom. So think of it like a student that's just learning ABC. Then they come to realize, 1 second, ABC creates magnificent poetry and literature. And then you find out behind literature there's more reality than literature cannot capture. So it's a process of discovery and a process of growth. Here it's not just an academic exercise, it's actually transformation. We're talking about transforming existence into a container. And I use that word very precisely, a container to all that I just mentioned, all the way up. And that's called Dir B'Tachtena. And there's no way you can jump the steps. Yes, we have many times different opportunities where you can do a few jumps. You can have a glimpse suddenly into deepest levels, tshuva, a Yom Tov, a Shabbos. But generally speaking, it has to go through the steps, because that's the only way it'll be integrated. It's just like you can't get a 5-year-old, no matter how brilliant he is, to suddenly be a brilliant scholar at 30. That would be a miracle. Bottom line, it wouldn't be on his terms. So it would defeat the whole purpose of an interface, of an integration. So that's a summation in very simple English. Now the details obviously are far more complicated, and especially because we're talking about transformation. Because remember, the yesh, at the end of the day, with all this being said, and how logical it may sound, how eloquent it may be, the yesh is much more powerful than we can ever imagine. So as much as we understand all this, the tentacles of all these concealments continue to exert their pressure on us. So we wake up in the morning, no matter how spiritual you are, you still see a material world. You still have material needs. Your body and soul, your body tells you it's hungry. All the different forces that seduce us, that control us, that demand all kinds of stuff from us, that obsess us, is all there. But what we have is, in our arsenal, we have Torah and we have Chassidus, and we have this information, and not just information, we have a methodology that if a person wants, they could refine their lives. Simple as that. And to refine their lives needs work. So Chassidus gives us the language, it also gives us the understanding, and it gives us the methods to do so. So to bring it to where we are now, after a long discussion of this transcendence and of the immanence of the Ratzon, desire, Kesser, and the spheres, which is still not a complete picture yet, but laying out those building blocks, what each one does. So he explains the effects of Kesser on us, that it has that ability to create a certain receptivity. And then the effects of the immanent energy, which is much more where we work on a daily and on a routine basis, because that's where the real process is, how the energy, how the air of Chesed goes into Chesed and so on. He goes back now in the last, this is going back, I guess it's from, chapter 83, where we are now, last 20, 30 chapters, is a discussion, what does spheres mean? So what do exactly the spheres mean? We say spheres. Since it's such a key thing in the whole picture, what does it mean? And the explanation given for spheres is that spheres are 3 meanings. Number 1 from the word misper, number. Basically, briefly, that is designating the element of the containers of existence. Then there's spheres from the word sipur, telling a story. They don't just tell you the structure. You have 10 components and here's what they look like and their number, their quantity, so to speak. You begin to appreciate the quality. which is more the energy within them, to the point that they tell a story. And they don't just tell a story of where these spheres come from, they also tell the story of the hidden power, the divine, infinite power that put these spheres in place, the artist that can make all the different types of art. And the third interpretation, which is where we are now, really coming to the real bulk, the real core center of it, is sphere from the word sapir. Now sapir, Evan sapir, is that particular type of precious stone. Initially everyone translated it as sapphire stone. It's not a sapphire stone. It's more a crystal. It's more like what he calls here, what we just learned in chapter 118, that one says, Evan Yukara Levena, a precious white stone, or clear stone. And the Radak says a crystal. Sometimes the word diamond is used. The bottom line is, it's a stone that doesn't have any shades. It's essentially clear, but it's still a luminescent. And he explained it at length that it's really a transparent stone. It's a transparent thing. So it allows the brilliance of something, the brightness, just to shine through. It's transparent. What does this add in the equation? Which is where we're discussing now, and that is that if sphere number focuses more on the structure, which also has the deeper meaning of the number, also has quality within it. This number is not just pure quantity. And if Sipur tells the story of the cosmic order and even beyond, this third interpretation is the highest, let's call it the most subtle dimension of the spheres, because they're all the same spheres are called by all three names. This focuses on the brightness of the spheres, how transparent they are. So to explain this transparency, he discussed at length the difference between keiches and levushim. That human faculties, for example, as opposed to the garments we wear, so faculties also are considered levushim compared to the soul, but they're attached levushim and they're revealers. They express your faculty, your eye. Without it, the power of vision would not manifest. The brain is the place where the mind manifests. Whereas levushim, garments, are concealers, either due to weather or due to hiding ourselves from others. Garments are concealers, not revealers. And to understand the difference between garments and containers, the Rabbi Rashab went into a long discussion of Yaakov and Lavan, because their story is essentially Lavan is a garment industry, and Yaakov is a diamond industry. Okay, let's put it this way. So Yaakov's job is to reveal, and Lavan's wants to conceal. And that is the significance of the mound and the pillar that each of them built when they finally part ways. Where he says, Idagal. So Lavan builds a gal, which is a mound. As he explains, a mound is a parsa. A parsa is a curtain that conceals, but it's a good curtain, healthy curtain conceals, like a teacher giving a riddle or hiding his ideas in order for the teach students to appreciate it or to come to understand. Lavan wants to build a mound out of it, a concealer. He doesn't want the bittul of Atzilus, as he puts it. And Yaakov's whole role, he says, Yaakov's role is to fulfill the purpose of existence, is to pierce Yaakov from the word Yibaka, from the same letters as Yibaka, to pierce the veil and to reveal in this concealed world, to reveal the energies all the way up to the source. So there's a long discussion of these two. In Kedusha, Lavan is Loivan Ha'elyon, the supernal whiteness. So there's also Lavan of Kedusha. And Yaakov's role is to reveal and bring down that whiteness. What is whiteness? That's what we're discussing now. Now, he doesn't say it specifically that that's connection, but in the Maimarim that you look up the sources, it's very clear the idea of supernal whiteness is in the Maimarim of Lavan and Yaakov. So it's very clear. And Yaakov's lifting up the stone is also Evan Sapir. So the stone represents, as he says, Malchus. A stone represents the diversity and the divisiveness or the division of this world, the multiplicity. And Yaakov took many stones, turned them into one. They became one. That's how they turn into Malchus. Malchus is concealed in this world, going through, I'm just using the language that I said earlier, but with the spheres now. Yaakov wants to take the Malchus, lift it back to Atzilus. That's one interpretation. And the other interpretation, in Atzilus itself, he connects it to higher levels of Atzilus, or what he calls Yichud Tiferes and Malchus, is like the full moon. The moon being Malchus, and part of the month it's concealed. Yaakov wants to reveal the Shemesh, which is the Midas, and all the way to Chachma, And all the way, being Yaakov is Tiferes, he connects all the way to the inner dimension of Keser, from where he draws down all this energy to pierce all the veils. And Lavan wants to block it, wants to block the flow. So essentially, in a long discussion of all these levels, bottom line is, think of it this way. Malchus represents, especially its lowest levels, the divine presence in existence, Shekhinah that's hidden in existence. Yaakov's role, which is giving us the power, and gives us the power to achieve this by Matan Torah. The Beis Hamikdash is a taste of it. Mashiach comes is the fulfillment of it. Is that Malchus that's concealed within existence should be revealed. As it's revealed, like the point begins to expand, the godliness is not just a hidden little point, but it begins to expand. As it expands, it climbs the ladder through Tiferes, all the way up to Pnimis HaKeser, which gives the power to draw it down. Yaakov does this through two ways, as he said. Through Torah, you draw it down. Tefillah elevates it. I'm just summing up again things that were said, and trying to create total fusion between the source and existence. That's in a nutshell.
Lavan is white. How does that go with blockage?
Well, Lavan, the whiteness of Lavan is like he said. There's Lavan the Zelum. There's two Lavans. There's the Lavan in the source. That's pure. Lavan as it comes below is the opposite. Why it's called Lavan below? He doesn't explain that. But the bottom line is the Lavan in the root is definitely the highest level of.
Focus on the Lavan in chapters, right? Didn't focus on the color.
He said Lavan Ayin a few times.
Yeah.
A few times. So I would say that the idea of whiteness in the purest form of it is if you want me to speculate, I could speculate that white in the Umazeh, in the alter ego of pure white, is a white that's empty. As in empty, doesn't want any revelation. He doesn't say that. I don't know if it says anywhere that. But what he does say is that Lavan Elyon, as it is in its root, is that pure whiteness. But he doesn't explain the whiteness. Now we're talking now about the white where we are now. Now, he said clearly that there's a Lavan of Kedusha and there's a Lavan of not Kedusha. Lavan of Kedusha, by the way, the mound also has a holy thing. The mound of Kedusha is not to conceal but to reveal. It's the veil that a teacher uses to convey an idea. But the Lavan that he's primarily focusing on is the Lavan of Klippa, the negative Lavan, that is a concealer. Okay. Now, I just want to say one thing, just in case you're following. This is you can see there's a progression as he climbs from Malchus. Basically, there were two interpretations of Malchus. One is as Malchus is concealed in Biyah, and Yaakov elevates that. And then there's Malchus in Atzilus itself is also Nekuda. The lowest level of Malchus, and the connection is to Tiferes. But he keeps using the word Chochmah sometimes, and then Keser. So you really have the players here sound like Malchus, Tiferes, Chochmah, Keser. And trying to make some order out of this, especially now in the last few chapters. So he began to discuss so Evan Asapir in chapter 118, he began to say, this is from the Pardes, this is Malchus as it becomes similar to and is receiving from Chochmah. So as opposed to what he said before Matseva, which is a pillar, he now goes connecting it to Tiferes, he's connecting it to Chochmah. Before, if you recall, in the earlier chapter, he said that the Nekud of Chochmah still has some shape, whereas the Nekud of Malchus has no shape at all, similar to Keser. So we're talking here about, does it have shape, does it not have shape? And clearly you're trying to bridge these two worlds. So the point of Malchus, he said, if you recall, because it's rooted in a place that's beyond definition, which is Radlah, the highest levels of Keser, that's why Malchus itself has no shape. On the other hand, we're connecting it to, we want to build it into a partzuf. So if you think the new moon has no shape, and then you want the new moon to become a full moon. So clearly, there's several things going on here. If you talk Malchus itself, if you remember, the Nekud of Malchus, he said, was Keser Malchus. Keser Malchus. So there's no shape. It doesn't have a manifestation. It's really, like you say, it has no light of its own, so to speak. But that's not where you want it to remain. Because if it stays in that type of state, it may be rooted in a very high place, but it's completely concealed. So the new moon may be rooted in the highest place, just like Malchus in this world may be rooted in the highest level, is rooted in the highest levels, but that's not where, that they don't want it to remain there. Yaakov's avodah is to take the stone and turn it into a pillar. Revelation. He says to bring Gilui into Malchus. So Malchus alone, on his own, it's like in Golus. He's in a fallen state. To do that, Malchus has to connect, not to Kesser, because it has already the root of Kesser. It has to connect to the Giluyim, the spheres. So Teferis is a key element because Malchus is in the middle path, and so is Teferis. Teferis is like the line, the crossbar, Mavrich ben Akotza lakotza, the crossbar that leads Malchus all the way to the root, to draw down deeper energies to pierce veils. But Chachma is a critical component because Chachma is the beginning of all spheres. And that's why here now he's going and starting to explain that to understand what really is going on, this is the Evan Sapir. So it's not just it's how Malchus connects with Chachma, which is really the key, because Malchus is the 10th sphere, Chachma is the first sphere. Its connection to Keser gives Malchus its enormous, so-called, you can call it beyond definition power. But its connection to Chachma is what creates definition power. But at the end of the day, Chachma and Malchus are very two different entities. And here is that where we go into a discussion that Chachma becomes a key element in the interface, because Chachma is where Gvul and Bli Gvul really meet. Keser is Bli Gvul. Malchus is the Bli Gvul as it's hidden and concealed, or it's rooted the Bli Gvul as it's hidden and concealed in completely indefined, limited worlds. Chachma is a key component. So in explaining this, he says, what's Evan HaSapir? The Pardes says that's Malchus as it connects with Chachma. And he begins to explain that this color, what is Sapir? So he says, Sapir, Gevan HaSapir, he says, Psichis Kol HaGvanim. Essentially, bottom line is the beginning of all colors. And he calls it going from no color to color. And from there, all colors divide. And in a long discussion, he establishes that's not the meaning that Chachma is a color that includes all the colors in it. Chachma is not a color. It's a colorless color. But through it, it's like a radiating light that without it, the other colors do not emerge. And this is a key component because Chachma becomes this type of interface. And in Aveda he called it when you do something for no color reasons, uncolored, by any intentions, any objectives. The foundation, he calls it, the foundation for all the binyan hakdusha, for the structure of all work, is that something is done for uncolored, by any of your kavanas, even the kavanah, even the intention of connecting to God. Just the experience as it is, it's true. That's why he says the color white, what really means the color clear white, is such that is neutral and transparent, and every other color with a backdrop of white emerges as it is in its truth. If, for example, you take a blue page or a blue backdrop and you put a color red, you don't really know what red looks like. It's affected by blue, and the blue affects the red affects the blue, etc. Same thing with all other colors. By the way, Yorik, as I saw from my mom, probably green, because he keeps saying Yorik like grass. Yorik, in the Mamorim, in this discussion, we're talking about the Yorik is yellow or green, but regardless. Okay, so now, to understand that was what we learned in the last chapter. He goes deeper, and once again, let me just add a quick thing I missed to say. At the end of chapter Kuf Yud Ches, he goes, now what level is this? So Keser is truly beyond colors. You can't even call it a colorless color. So not in the get. Chachma you can call a colorless color, which is what he's using as the color clear or clear white. And from there is the root to all other colors. So he calls it a place where color meets no color, essentially what he says. Ein Gevin to Gevin. And then he goes to the discussion, what level of Chachma is it? Is it a lower level of Chachma which is connected more to colors, or is it a level of Chachma, a higher level, that's connected more to Keser? But as any way you twist and turn it, the bottom line is, Chachma is an existence. In the world of colors, it gives you a taste of beyond color. In the world of gvul, of structure and shape, it gives you an example of something that's out of no shape. In other words, if there was no color white, we wouldn't have a physical example of that type of shapeless or colorless reality. That's what the color white, clear white, does for us. And he explains that this is... I found something interesting I wanted to say. So he says that even according, he says this is the difference between Eir and Keli, right? One second. Yeah. Okay, that's that. Now, in the final last chapter, 118, he discussed at long length the color white, clear white, and explained that it's the only Gevin, it's called a Gevin Atzmi. It's called a core color, which means all other colors are made up of mixtures. All other colors mix with each other. And with all kinds of back and forth, different levels, different explanations of this, ended up basically stating that's only the color white that is a pure color. And that's why it does not mix with other colors. I mean, you can technically mix it, but then you're basically tinting it. Other colors have shades. White doesn't have shades. Even though he brings that it has shades, but it's all within white. For example, there's no such thing as reddish white. If it's reddish white, it's because you mixed in something that's red. Whereas if it's reddish red, make darker shades of red look like black. Darker shades of green or yellow look like red. And in white, you don't have that. And then he gave other examples, the way they mix with each other. The bottom line is, if you're thinking from a reality that is beyond colors, white is the purest form, and everything else is an addition. For example, if you say the grass is green, the green is already saying something. The grass is not necessarily, green does not define grass. It's a description of grass. So we're not talking about necessarily a paint or something that is added on. Even if it's naturally created as green, it's already a description. Whereas white is not a description of the thing. White is the color of the reality itself. Because it's clear. It's transparent in that sense. That's one thing he says. Another thing I would say that's maybe mashmad is the thing called a pigment. Grass is green because it's a pigment of green. In other words, grass could technically not be green. You mentioned that if it dries up or something like that. Whereas white doesn't have such a thing. What is it going to turn to if it dries up, so to speak? If you take away the pigment of a clear crystal, it has no pigment. It's in that sense, it's like a color that has no color, essentially. Again, we're not talking about the painting white. And we had the discussion here. We talked about pishtan, for example, pishtan halavan, which is, by the way, pishtan and bad is the same. Pishtan is flax. Flax and linen are the same thing. Flax becomes linen, essentially. Am I correct in saying that? Yeah. Flax is as it grows.
Yeah, and linen is the product.
Right. So that is considered to be one of the pure forms of white. I said, yeah.
Does transparency come into the picture with white? Or not?
I would say, yeah. You see, something's transparent. That's exactly the point. Something transparent cannot be colored. So in other words, that's another way to put it. Like you say, a clear pane of glass.
It's not colored white.
It's not. No, but so that's why that's why the word white is and you can't just use. I said clear white.
He's not using it as a.
I'm not using it as a color white. I'm using it as the word clear. Clear.
Is the proper then if that's what you mean.
But what he uses the word lavan.
Right.
He uses lavan.
But he's using the word lavan because he wants to associate it later on with him. But
well, the chassidus he uses the word
in English for the average person would be clear.
But there's an expression called clear white.
Right. Clear white. And there's off white.
Okay.
You call it pigments.
I thought we said there was no
Shades.
pigments in white.
Well, that's if you take it as white, the color, but not the colorless white.
So colorless white is, you wouldn't call this crystal white.
No, you wouldn't.
Well, I use the word white because he uses the word lavan here. So tell me how you use the word lavan when he says lavan.
If you're saying that it's transparency, then it's clear.
Well, he keeps using the word white different. I think when you talk about natural clear and white, that's synonymous in his words here. Natural clear is synonymous with the word lavan.
But in English, the meaning was different.
Maybe. But for example, you do have the concept of white light. You do have the concept of a prism. They'll say it's white light,
Right.
and then when the light bends, it's colors. So what do they mean by white light there? They don't mean white. They mean colorless. That's what they really mean.
It says this here. It's Ayin Poshut, the Inishai, the Gavnum, Kim Gavnum Poshut, Kim Gavnum.
Exactly. Let's put it this way: when the Kohen Gadol wore bad, wore linen on in Kippur, which is a big basis of these mamorim, of this maimer, as opposed to gold, one of the key things was because white is pure. In that sense, white is a symbol of this colorlessness. So yes, you can say that technically speaking, white is another color, but in the spectrum of things, they do call it white light, and they don't mean white as you just said it. They don't mean the painting white wall. Do I want a white wall or a red wall? They mean it as clear. In other words, when you look it up, look up light and the prism, and you'll see they'll say all light is white.
What kind of light?
White, all light is white, meaning clear. That's what it means. White. White is neutral. That's what really white means. It's a neutral color. That's what I said. When you want to see a real other color, you need a contrast of white. Let me ask you a question. Someone's coming to paint your walls, and your walls are dirty. What are they going to do? They'll put first a base of white in order to put on it and show you the real color, what red is going to look like or blue is going to look. So what does that mean? That means white, even in the world of colors, has an element of neutrality. Anyway, let's not be semantic. See, you want to use a different word? Fine. I don't have a problem with using white, and I don't know who controls the English language anyway. We say we use it what we want to use it for.
You want to communicate like you do all the time.
So I just told you. So I just gave you an example where white is very different than red. It's not just another color. Red would never allow that. See, red has a personality and a definition. That's what he wants to say. White does not have a personality and definition. That's the point. It's beyond that definition.
Is white itself a color, or is it a lack of color?
Maybe it's a color that. What's that?
What do you mean this from? Is this an Ayin Beis?
Yeah, there's whole chapters. Anyway, being that you weren't here during those chapters, I don't want to go through every line. It's discussed at length. Basically, my answer to that, it's both. No, it's both. It's a color that is beyond color. That's how ultimately it comes down to be.
It's in the color family. It is? It's in the color family, but it's not color. That's the way it's said.
It is interesting to say that. It's not in the spectrum. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet is the diffusion.
Exactly, it's not in the spectrum.
White is not part of that.
White is not part of it.
Yeah, but without white, the others would never be.
It all somehow, I don't know what the right word is. I'll leave it to that. Everything comes out of light.
No.
You pass clear light into a spectrum, you get color.
You get the rainbow spectrum.
That's exactly the way I would put it. So the white does not have it all. That's the point. It's not a klal. He made it very clear. It's not a klal and prat. It's not details that are included in there. It's a source of it, but it's not included in there. It just without it, the others will not emerge.
With the prism, you pass the white light.
Right. Exactly.
You get the spectrum of all colors, none of which are white.
You're going to have to go through a whole chapter 118, 119 actually. It's not one line. It's maybe literally 3 pages that he discusses just this. And he says a lot of details about it. Anyway.
You said one quote, you just said that the light, in Kesser there's no colors.
Kesser is completely beyond color.
So Lavan El Yom, the supernal whiteness, is in Kesser, isn't it, or higher?
So we learned by Lavan, there's both Lavan is 2 interpretations. Kesser or Chachma. No, not Lavan Lamata Lamaya. Both in Klippa and in Gedusha, Lavan is sometimes Kesser, sometimes Chachma. So the reconciliation of that is basically, he says, the higher level of Chachma is essentially manifesting the colorlessness that's beyond color of Kesser. In Chachma, when it already enters the world of colors, manifests as no color. That's how I would put it. That's how he puts it, actually. You understand what I'm saying?
So Lavan El Yom is
Kesser or Chachma.
Kesser or Chachma. And when it's in Kesser, Lavan El Yom.
It depends which level of Kesser you're talking about. If it's the highest levels, it's probably beyond white, beyond any color. Lower levels, it's connected to color. It's all in here, by the way. He says it all here. Then this Chachma. Chachma is the real place where he defines love and Chachma basically comes like that. So that's what he says. That when something is when the divine manifests, the divine is beyond manifestation. But when it manifests, is basically an infinite manifestation. What would it look like? White. Now God is not white or blue or red, but if God were to manifest in the world of colors, it would look like white. Clear, transparent, and pure.
White is not transparent.
It's not correct. White is transparent. I just gave you an example. When you put white on a wall, it's not transparent as see-through. Right, but when you put any other color on it, it does not disturb the flow of that other color.
That's a different usage of the word transparency.
Or maybe it's another ways of using white. You have to redefine the word white by you.
Well, that's the common usage.
I told you white light. It's not correct. White light in a prism is transparent light.
The average person, when you say this is white, they will say.
Well, the average person doesn't necessarily know the full meaning of white. I told you white light. White light. What is white light? You ever hear the expression?
Yes, sure.
Is that transparent? Total transparent.
Is it?
Yeah. It's the light of before the prism shapes it.
Okay.
If all light was not bent, if airwaves did not bend, everything would be clear and it would be called white light. You ever hear of like black light? Like black hole? What does black light mean? That the light does not is held back, it doesn't express itself. It doesn't mean black. It means that it looks like it's black. Anyway.
Yeah, but that's transparent, not white. Revelation of God means it's transparent.
I think there's a concept called clear white. That's what I think you have to just put in your word. Okay. And then he finally said that all this is rooted. What does this all come to explain? The Shema Etzem, which is Shem Havaya. That even though all the names of God obviously are rooted in the divine and are not additional elements, but nevertheless each of them express and manifest a particular dimension of the divine. And it's only the Shema Etzem, which really is like the white light, that just expresses all of those dimensions. Okay. And then he brings it back to the earlier discussion that we've discussed quite a few number of times, or much far earlier, that there is the that there's Eir and Keli. Eiris are primarily reflectors of expressing the divine. So it's more like the white, more like the colorless white. And then there's the Kelim, they give you the identity. And even according to what's explained in this discourse, that Eir also has in it image, also has spheres in it. He says, but it's not the definition of the Keach HaGvul of the containers. Because the Eiris are still reflecting the source. As I explained it, that even the Chesed Gvura within Eiris is really more about the source wanting Chesed and Gvura. Whereas in the containers it's more about the identity. So that's how it manifests in this color white, so to speak. Gevin Apostle K'may Gevin Lovin. With other colors, like the names, other names are, each one has its particular color. And this does not have a color. So I think that at the end of the day, even pure white, that we're not talking as transparent, even the white you're talking about. When you're talking Avodah, someone will say, what is your attitude? So if you have a colored, if you're colored by anything, by any opinion or any bias, that would be a color. And white would be no color, in that sense. So even if it's all the way in the world of color, literally, if you want to even put it in the world of the spectrum of colors, which it's not, it's white. It's neutral in that sense. It doesn't have a color. It doesn't have a bias, basically. It's not colored by any particular intention, whereas the other colors have a personality. Each one, reddish, red reflects something. For example, when they put up lights, there's red, green, and yellow. Red, people see red as danger. Stop, fire. Green, they see as permissive. Blue also. But green is a deeper, and yellow is more of a neutral, but not completely neutral. It's in between. Not a strong statement, but it's all a statement. You're not going to have a white light by traffic lights. Why not? Because white doesn't elicit anything in this context. White elicits a symbol of purity. So when we say that the Kohen wore Big Day Lavan, we're not saying he wore white instead of black or white instead of red. He's wearing pure. In the world of our world, we don't have another symbol of pure, so we have the color white.
Imagining white light at a traffic. Nobody knows what to do. Everyone's just all over the place. White light.
He gave the example, this is what we spoke earlier about. He takes, for example, flax, linen. So he uses that. He says there's no color in the world that can emulate that particular color of the whiteness of linen. That's what he says. Right here on top of Resh Chov Zayin, he says, Resh Chov Tes, rather. He says, in truth, you won't find something that is the color of white, that tzivui, that has the tint, that has the pigment of white, like core whiteness, true whiteness. It says, which means the colors white that we do find, they're not equal. Can't compare them to the pure white, like we see pishtan, halavan, the whiteness of flax. Ein dugmase, there's no example for it in several colors, no color that can actually, you can't create a color to emulate that. That it should be exactly like that color, because. I mean, today you could say, well, listen, I could paint something that looks exactly like that, but it means it's not probably exactly like that particular color. Interesting, I wanted to add was that Tzemach Tzedek, at the end of the Likutei Torah, says an interesting thing when he talks about this whiteness. He says, we could say that example for white and the other colors, the pshitus of white compared to the other colors, is like the difference between written letters and engraved letters. Written letters are like an additional element, and engraved letters are from the thing itself. So they're more transparent in that sense. So, at the end of the day, he does say that even engraved letters are also letters. So it sounds to me very similar to what he's saying here, that there are spheres even in the energy, but the focus there is not the spheres, it's the energy. So it's only a type of within the thing itself, it's the color of white does not add an element to any particular entity. Like I said before, you could have grass, and then you say there's green grass. You say there's blue water, or blue with chelis. What's that? Blue. How do you translate chelis? Chelis is blue wool. Okay, or blue water. Different colors. So there, it's an adjective, the word blue. The white is a symbolic of something that is not adding anything onto it. It's just what it is. And you didn't add any particular color to it. Okay. So now let's continue chapter.
Does he discuss black? Because white is and black is like opposite. Is there any discussion of shachor?
Yeah, he mentions shachos. Yeah. He mentions it more in context that red, when it gets very dark red, is very similar to black. So he mentions also as a color. There are places where dark, black, and white are comparable. Because sometimes when you say keser, it's so no light there, so you call it dark. But it's like Yeshus Cheshach Sisrei. That's holy darkness. It's a darkness that's beyond light. But he doesn't discuss that here. In that sense, they probably have a similarity. I would say probably that Shachar there is really even deeper, because it's like complete void of anything. See, that dark light is not the beginning of all colors. That's beyond color. The white we're talking is at least in the realm. He almost, in one place it seems like, what does energy look like? Energy. Like you said, a prism. If there was a dark room, you would not be able to see the pigments of red, blue, green, right? Now, for physics point of view, why not? Because first of all, without light, you don't see anything. But more importantly, because there's nothing to bounce off. So what's happening technically when you look now, you see this tablecloth, you see this chair, you see colors. Light is bouncing off different objects. Those colors are not seeing a color. Your colors change the wavelength of the light. So red, for example, has a far shorter wavelength than blue does. And the wavelength as it's bouncing back to you is distorting. It's like the prism. It's some way shaping. Now, if there was no atmosphere, if you get rid of all atmosphere, there would be no colors.
No color?
Yeah.
You send a red cloth into space?
I don't know if space is no atmosphere. Space has still an atmosphere. If you have no bouncing, if you have no
gravity in space.
If you can eliminate the thing that bends light, yeah, you'll have.
There's no pigment internally that it's like the sound, the one of the trees.
Yeah, something like that.
In the forest,
according to physics, correct. Yes, according to physics, yes, that's actually right. For example, atoms don't have color.
Atoms don't have color.
Because they're beyond the place where something is bent. Sounds don't have color for that reason.
There's no intrinsic thing as color.
It's intrinsic because in a world where the things are bending, it's intrinsic.
No, but if you put a black thing, a red color in a...
But it could be manipulated. Yeah,
no light,
a scientist can manipulate a wall that's red and you'll think it's white. 100%. They just have to counter the bounce. They have to just counter that bending, which may not be easy to do and consistently, but it definitely can be done. Look, when you shine a light through a prism, you take away the prism and the light doesn't have a color. Suddenly the prism, what's the prism doing? The prism has no colors. You're not going to find red inside the prism. The prism is taking a light that was colorless and suddenly giving you, like a rainbow, red, green, blue. How does that happen? Where's the red, green, blue coming from? There's nothing intrinsic, as you just said. So what you're seeing, when you see actual red, that's what you're seeing. You're seeing light being bent by different things. I mean, look, I'm definitely not a scientist. Neither am I.
I don't know.
No, but a prism is clearly, you understand a prism works that way. Why is there a rainbow?
I understand now, which is very limited, is it takes different spectrums. So it's in there. The color is in that white light. Is in that light. It's just you can't see it until they somehow divide it up the different spectrums.
Bend it. Okay, good.
So it's there though. It's there, but our eyes can't perceive it until it goes through this type of revelation of the fact that those colors are there, but they're different wavelengths that we can't perceive. But once the spectrum is a tool for enabling us to perceive it later.
Fine. So how does that change things?
No, because those colors are in the white light.
I could argue that's not that way at all. I could argue.
I don't. You're the art.
No, I could argue that way. You could argue the opposite way.
No. Okay.
That the prism actually diffuses and limits the white, so it's like actually distorting the picture. In other words, when you see colors, you're really seeing a distortion of what light really is like. You could argue that. And you just happen to worship colors, but since when colors are so valuable? You make it sound like the colors have to be. Colors are, from God's point of view, the whole color is created. But even from a scientific point of view, just because we see certain things, today matter is energy. But you see matter. You're convinced there's matter. But they'll tell you this is energy. It's just energy that's hardened. So what is it? Energy or matter? So of course you can call it whatever. It's not semantics. The bottom line is it is energy of a different form. Let me ask you something. When you take water, you freeze it, it's ice. You boil it, it becomes gas. Which is its most natural state? You can't even answer that question. We don't even know. Maybe gas is its most natural state. And it's just been so-called temperature has caused it to become fluid and then when you freeze it, it becomes that. So what is its true reality?
We gotta ask Albert
Einstein.
A lot written since him.
Tomes
and tomes.
And by the way, if you go to the Buddhists, if you go to Far Eastern, they'll tell you. If you go to the Far Eastern, they'll tell you it's all energy, and matter is an illusion. Chassidus, Torah says, Bereshis bara Elokim, that he wanted energy to translate into matter, and with a mitzvah you turn matter back into energy.
In fact, the only way we know that there's matter is when it's done.
Right.
Because I'll give you one other perspective short. Structural biology. Color is solely an aspect of the relationship of atomic arrangements on the biology on the object. There's no such thing out there as color whatsoever. That's that perspective.
Yeah.
There's no intrinsic
There's no
different
such thing
molecular
as
structures
color.
that cause different types of.
No. There's atomic relationships that create certain densities here and spaces there, and those get reflected back in the back of the retina, and then back in the optic nerve, and it's there. Color, from their perspective, is solely a function of the mind.
Robots.
That's a different perspective. It's biological perspective. It's not that there's nothing external about color.
I mean, intrinsic, not external. Intrinsic.
What do you mean intrinsic to what?
Intrinsic
Intrinsic
means
to the
that
thing?
without your biology.
Intrinsic to you is color, but intrinsic to
What I'm
matter
trying to
is
say,
not
without
color.
the person's brain seeing that this
There's no
object,
color, right.
you're
There's
saying
no
it's
such
colorless.
thing as color.
And
There's no objective
color
out there.
And I'm not.
color.
If you're saying that's a fact, it's a fact.
That's a
No,
perspective.
he's
It's a
Oh, it's
perspective.
perspective. Because I would say, as the other argument could be, and again, I'm ignoramus when it comes to these things. I'm not knowledgeable, but you might think that the inside what we call red and we call green and blue, there's some type of unique inherent structure. And we're perceiving it as a different color. But really what it means is that there's different structures going on inside the molecular structures of these different things, or different that are inherent to the object that produce what we perceive as green and blue. But meaning that somebody who was not biology, if you could understand it, meaning that even if you didn't see it, we'll put it this way. If you could prove that there was an inherent structure, a molecular structure that produces blue, green, and black, you could figure it out by looking in a microscope, looking at the molecular structure of the object, you could tell whether this is going to be perceived as black or green, without ever seeing it. Maybe. I don't know.
You're missing one key point. The word black and green means nothing. For all you know, when you call red, I may be seeing as blue. We just made the decision, So when you're talking now, if you really get into the philosophical side of it, it's even more complicated than you think it is. Because you're basing everything on your empirical observation.
I have a small observations in this biology book called The Tree of Life, which the concept is that everything that exists is really a function of structural determination.
Everything that exists. There's no
One second. Eliezer, you're an intelligent man.
Yeah, I tried.
Okay. It would be brilliant if we can get some scientists who learn this and translate it into the models out there. But I will tell you what I can understand from Chassidus and the little I know from science. I know today, and we both know, that it's not your arms and legs that shape you. It's a DNA on a cellular level, a subcellular level that we can't even see. And there's 75 trillion cells in the body. We also know that there's the whole, the subatomic world. That's using computer language. You see a letter on the screen. Are you seeing an A or a B? Is it really an A or a B, or just what you see as an A or a B? There you go. So when I write an A and B on paper, you'll say that's an A and B. But on screen, you know it's not. And maybe what you wrote is also not. Maybe the whole world is a code, is a source code that appears to our eye. Our brain is doing what computer programmers do. So you know what it really is? Hold on. But am I saying? What I'm saying, exactly, zeros and ones. Put them in the right order, and it looks like an A. And we all agree, and then we come a comment. But you go to Russia, they don't say it an A; they call it something else. I'm just giving you an example. So So bottom line is what we see. Just like on a computer, we all agree is definitely not intrinsic, because someone can go into your computer and manipulate it. Every time you look at an A, it's going to become a B. That we know, right? All you got to do is change some wires. We've got to change some program. So there we know. Now with Chassidus in place, that there's a Saraman Morish and Nivra Elam. The same is true. It's a code. God wrote a code. That code is going to translate into red and green and blue and so on. It's a code. Now, if you go to the source code is white. Well, let's call it colorless. Colorless. Colorless is closest approximation to colorless is white. Let's put it that way. Maybe that's a good way to say it. And then from there, the rest of the colors came. So here was a big discussion. Is it a klal and prat, where all the colors in there, and then they just come out? Or, no, there's a state of almost like an amorphous state of a place where there's not color, where color and no color meet, and that becomes the energy that when it flows into the next step will will bring out the colors. Now, it's clear from a Chassidus point of view, all colors are divine created. Just like God created trees and stones and humans, He created colors. But the question is, what's the process of how colors came into being? I guarantee you, science, studying this will come to the same ideas as He explains them here. There's a process. There's no question that colors, there's no such thing as just colors sit there. It's definitely impulses and energy that's shaping colors. Because even how you twist and turn it, what really distinguishes red from green? Why is there a difference between them? This everyone will say. It's simply different. It's a length of light waves. Just like the difference between a shrill sound and a dull sound. I do It's two sounds coming from the same place. Huh?
Sound is very similar.
Exactly, sound. I gave the example, by the way, sound to what is white or colorless here. Think of a flute. I just blow through a flute, or I cover the holes, and then particular sounds come out. White is that natural color that's not a hybrid. It's just, let's put it this way, it's first expression of something. And blue, green, red is some type of shift has to happen for it to take on that type of particular shape. That's what Big Day Lavan is, really. The white garments that the Kohen Gadol wore was getting to Levin Elyon. He was expressing the purity that's beyond the shape and definition of colors as we know it. And then there's the relationship between the two. Here he's basically saying is a Shema Etzem, that's Havaya, and a Lakim, Kale, so on, Tzvokis, is the colors. That's where we were up to here. And what happens is like this. What was I reading here? It's the Koyach HaGvul Sheba Ein Sof. That's really the root of colors. It's the Koyach HaGvul. The power, just like God creates the power to distinguish between Chesed and Gvura, between the distinctions, these colors are rooted there. That's the Eish Harishim. Whereas light itself, Oyer, is without these shapes. And even according to the opinion discussed in this Maimer, it's still primarily, Oyer is primarily, like he says, it's not as defined, and it's really more pshitis, more unshaped and unsubstance. Okay. We have time to learn here. What time is it?
10:05.
I'll learn chapter 119. And this is also the Ayin of Sapir, Lashon Sfirus Behirus. The word Sapir comes now from the word Sfirit, Behirus, brightness or brilliance, shine. Because energy is also a garment compared to the source. Like it says, he wraps himself in light like a shirt. The Targum Yonason, the Mesatif Nehuda, Ichsadina. He wraps around the light, Ichsadina, like a sadin, like a shirt, like a wrapper around him. Medrash Rabbi Isa. And the Medrash says that Shenesata B'Kosh Baruch Hu Kesalma. That God wrapped himself with it like a shirt. Chenu b'Bereishis Saba Parsha Zeh, b'Shmei Saba Parsha Nun, Isa Be'efanacher. And elsewhere it explains it another way. V'hainu delegabe atzmis. Compared to the core, ub'chinas levush levad. Compared to the core, that's higher than Ur. What does it mean he wraps himself? Who's this he that's wrapping himself? Compared to the road, it's a garment, only a garment. Because it's not the core essence itself, it's only a revelation of it. And every revelation is a form of a garment. Now, obviously, as we learned earlier, it's a very high garment and a very transparent garment, which we're going to see in a moment. Know that these three words, air, light or energy, shem, name, levush, garment, they're all one. Shakol hu'ara, they're all reflection. Meaning not the core essence. Ubepardes be'erech shem, the shem hu levush. He says the shem, name is a garment. Harei Eiru b'chinas levush legabe atzmis. So we see that Eir is a garment compared to the atzmis, the core. Omnom hu b'chinas levush Eir she'ena mailam amastik klal al atzmis. However, it's a garment of light. It's a bright garment. In other words, it's a transparent garment that does not conceal or cover at all on the core. V'loi kamoi b'chinas hakelim, not like the level of containers she'mailimim al etzem ha'er she'megalim. Not like containers that, yes, reveal, but they reveal through concealing. They reveal they conceal the core light that they're revealing. Like, for example, if I speak now ideas, that's more of a keli than a er, because it's not transparent. My ideas are going through a filter. The filter is called the kelim of speech. So er is referring to a filter that is a transparent filter, basically. And even the inner dimension of the containers that he discussed earlier, if you were here, I don't know if you were here, but he discussed earlier the inner dimension of containers. This was in chapter Kuf Tazayin, 116. So he spoke that the inner dimension of Kalim, that's where the they too are very similar to the energy. They're transparent. They're basically what Oyer is to the Atzmis, Pnimis HaKelim is to the Oyer. But he's saying here, Pnimis HaKelim compared to the Oyer are still containers. At the end of the day, even though they are completely, what's the word I want to use? Completely subjugated to the energy, but they're still containers, and therefore the Atzmi, the way it is, in its core does not shine through them, illuminate through them. I contrast energy, or light, that does not have any concealment or can cover up at all, and reveals the essence of the core, the way it is. The filter is basically transparent. So you could ask the question, what do we need it for? Well, we need it for because it's taking it to a level at least that now it can even be diminished further, etc. Like it says, God will be to me like Elikim. This is going on the future. This is what Yaakov said. When he said, I think, did he say it? 1 second. Let me just go back a moment. So he said, I think somewhere Yaakov says it. Anyway, that Havaya will be to me like Elikim. The Koyal also, this goes on the future. So Havaya b'chinas Elikim. What does it mean? Havaya will be like to me like Elikim. That's something that is beyond. So Havaya will become like the level of Elikim. So now he's explaining, what does this mean? Today, the revelation of the divine light that comes from the sun itself, like the Havaya, has to go through the shield, or the shell of Elikim. The sheath. Okay, good. The same thing Lasid, the higher level of Havaya La'ela will be Ayidei Hashem Havaya L'Tata. Will be revealed through the lower Havaya. So you're just talking about higher levels here. So today you're talking about Havaya L'Tata going through Elikim, then Havaya La'ela will go through Havaya L'Tata. And that's what meaning, the Havaya of now will be L'Asad Kamei Elikim. Because today, in other words, basically the filter today will become so refined that it will become like Havaya, the lower Havaya in the future. And that will become the filter. Shaboy Vayodi Yigili Shem Havaya Leil, because through it will become the Gili Havaya Leil. He doesn't explain here what Havaya Leil and Havaya Latata is, but earlier I think he does. Essentially think of it like if Havaya Lekim is let's say Zah Malchus, okay? A divine energy, and then it comes down Elikim through concealment. So think Zah, Elikim, Malchus will elevate to the level of the sun, and then that will become the new Elikim, essentially. That will become the sheath, as you put it, is the filter of even higher levels of dimensions. Ach Eifen Agili be'Eifen Acher Legamri. The Akshav Hagili de Hester. But however, it's not just a change of levels. It's not like, okay, now the filter is here, it's a lower filter, and then this is the energy, now the filter become, the energy of yesterday will become today's filter, and now it reveals a higher energy. He's saying there's a core qualitative difference. What's the qualitative difference? The Akshav Hagili de Hester. Today's filter is a concealer. The sun and its sheath is like Hashem Elokim. The Kamoisha Magan Renatik Hashemesh, just like the sheath and the shield. One of them is a shield and one is a sheath of the sun. How do you master Eretz Hashemesh? It conceals on the core light of the sun. Same thing, Shem Elokim, which is generally the containers. They conceal, and the energy does not allow the core energy to reveal. That's then. That's now. Sorry. So basically now, yes, we have a filter, but the filter is a concealer, not a revealer. But when the gili will be Shem Havaya, he means Havaya L'Ela, the higher. I'm sorry, no. But when the filter will be Shem Havaya, like you said, Havaya L'Elakim, that in other words, it won't longer be Elakim, then the lower Havaya. It'll be the gili of Etzem Eshelei B'chinas Hester. It'll be a revelation without any concealment. So then what's the filter accomplish? That's the case. The filter will accomplish that it will become internalized. That it will be manifest and clothed and revealed in the worlds. That's the achievement. So a filter today is a concealer to limit. Then the goal is that it filters, means it integrates in a form of pnimi. So what we have really is the following. You have all the steps. I've mentioned these steps several times as we've been learning these. You have where everything is concealed, as it is, let's say, in the world that we look at right now, at least to our eyes. Then the first step is you get some revelation, but you get it like through shades. It's come through shades, many layers. Then there's another type of shield. It has a completely different purpose. Its purpose is not to shade it. Its purpose is to channel it. So I'll give you an example. We use this example of a teacher conveying an idea to the lowest possible level. There he needs to put it into the simplest words, maybe even to like almost ABC level. Most of it is concealed. The goal is to reveal, but at this point, you'd say 95%, 99% is concealed. The student grows and now is able to read. The student not only read, can understand a concept. But the concept is still far beyond the teacher. Now the teacher says, okay, I'll tell you the concept, but I'm going to give you examples. And the examples are furthermore still concealers. They may include riddles. They may include even disorganizing the letters. Then you come to a point where the student is getting closer to the teacher. And now he still needs explanation. But now the explanation is really no longer, we're not dealing with, I'm going to give it to you bite size. I'm giving it to you the way it is, but I'm giving it to you with one layer lower than myself for you to be able to really integrate it. Because if I say it the way it is, you're not there yet. That's just an example. So you basically have two types of filters. Ones that are primarily concealers with a little revelation, and others are primarily revealers with a little concealment, so to speak. Concealment in the context of integration as opposed to real concealment. That's essentially, ultimately there are thousands of such levels, obviously. That's the whole education process. That's why two people are alike. How these filters work. But broadly speaking, there's two categories here. That's what he's saying now. So basically, he's going back to being spheres and behiras. Okay. So that's what he says. So he says, why? The Shem Havaya D'Le'ela b'chin sevav klam sheb'chin is bligvul. Because Shem Havaya D'Le'ela is sevav klam. It is transcendent energy beyond structure, beyond definition. Ve'en above b'chin sislapshas pnimi, cannot come, and does not come in an internal manifestation. It's above us. But the ultimate purpose is that it should be manifest. It should be enclosed. That means in a level of revelation. It's a parenthesis, which goes a number of lines. Means islapshus. Like in Tanya 48, chapter 48. There where he explains why he says Soviv Kalam doesn't mean it surrounds the worlds. It means it's not manifest in the world. They don't feel it. But it's in the world, it's in existence all the time. We learned this before. What does Gili Be'elmes means? Halbosha. So for example, right now in this room, there are all kinds of energy flows. Most of it is makif from our perspective because we don't relate to it. We don't sense it. Then you feel an energy enters into you, you feel warmth. You feel intelligence, you feel insight, a stroke of insight or something. That's a halbosha. Halbosha means a manifestation that you can, a conscious experience of something, essentially. Kihem malbishim masigim hashpah shemekablim. So Gili Be'elmes means halbosha because they're malbish or masig. They malbish, they are dressed up in, they enclothe, umasigim, and comprehend the transmission that they're receiving. So if I, for example, now, let's take dogs can hear sounds we don't hear. So the sound is passing right through us. We don't even know it's there. That means that we're not masig, we're not relating to the hashpah coming our way. By the way, this is very much going back to colors. You mentioned red, blue, green. I know that you're not playing devil's advocate, you want to really understand, but think for a second, Eliezer. Yeah. How many colors are you not seeing? When we look now, how many colors do we not see? Who knows? There may be colors that are invisible. Right. Ultraviolet, ultra-red, X-ray. They can X-rays pierce even. I'm just pointing out that the energy, it's all energy, and it's only simply, like he said, it's what we were given the ability through our tools to be able to see. And someone else, no problem, even without a miracle, may be able to see what we don't see physically, just like a dog can hear sounds we don't hear. And I don't mean Ruchnis and Ruach HaKodesh now. I'm not talking about miracle, someone that has a different. Actually, I'll tell you something even further. Ruach HaKodesh is exactly that. It's not so miraculous. It's miraculous because we don't have it. But what really is it? It's someone who's able to see a reality. Tune into a different level of reality. It's just like some people can read a face, and some people can't. No, when they asked the Rebbe, when the college students asked the Rebbe in Tafshin Chav, 1960, they asked the Rebbe if he can do miracles. Unbelievable. Yeah, the Rebbe edited it. He did edit it. Yeah, I found it actually. I gave it out to my son's bar mitzvah. The edited. It's unbelievable. Yeah, that whole yechidus is beautiful. There.
He said he's able to go up.
He says basically, I can't speak about me. Don't believe. What others say about me, I don't have to respond to. But if you ask me in concept, that's how the Rebbe began. He always would answer that way. He wouldn't say, when they asked him, can he do miracles? He says, I'm not talking about me now, don't believe what others say about me. That's what he said. But if you ask me in concept, he said that a miracle simply is this. If matter is defined by energy, and in other words, so if you're able to go to the engineering room where the energy is this and change that, it naturally changes the matter. Then the Rebbe concluded, you know what he said? He said, if I'm able to influence you now, and when you leave this room, everybody would add a mitzvah, I will have performed a miracle. That was his last line. And when he edited it, he changed the I to we. We will have performed a miracle. Which is interesting, is that it's not necessarily only humble. It's also because you're part of it. Because if you don't do it, it doesn't help what I.
You have that?
Yeah, it's printed. But he says, we will have performed a miracle. The edit, he changed from I to we. It's interesting.
I think you mentioned, I saw somewhere he says he's able to go up to the Mazal.
That's explanation. He doesn't say that. He basically says, like I said, like an engineering room. That if energy defines matter, so you change the energy, you change the matter.
You use the engineering?
Yeah.
You use the engineering?
Not engineering room uses, I think matter and energy. Energy and matter. I don't know if he uses engineering. I don't think he uses engineering, but but definitely energy and matter. That everything is material, is evolved from the energy within it. The spiritual energy, maybe.
I'd like to see the exact lesson. That's
an important statement. And maybe spiritual energy, because it doesn't mean just.
You know that?
Yeah.
It's happening today on the physical level.
How's that?
Nanotechnology.
Yes.
Exactly.
100%. What's the question? Not even a question.
Manipulating at the subatomic level to produce totally new. A printer they have printers that are producing tractors. Printing tractors. Yeah. By manipulating at the subatomic level. You change the structure of
those 3D printers, 3D piano.
No, not 3D. Those are special.
No, but one second. And what about manipulating DNA and creating a different type of human and genetic?
3D printers are much more.
That's not. One second. Let's get something clear. This is not even crazy stuff anymore. Look, I told you. What you see in a computer screen, everybody realizes is just manipulating this. So why can't you say the physical world is that way too? It's not even a question for any physicist. They all say that's a common thing. The question is whether you could manipulate it and you can.
I'll give it to you.
No, but
Economics 2.0.
But no, go further.
With your guy that you mentioned last week, Economics 2.0 is based on the notion that resources are not limited. There's no such thing as limited resources because there's an infinite universe that can be manipulated.
It talks about nanotechnology.
Because the main key is because matter can always be converted to energy and energy into matter and it never disappears. Nothing disappears. Even when you finish, your gas tank is empty, the energy that released is still existent.
I mean, I could have an unlimited bank account?
You
After the spend, you just grab it after the spend and put it back in.
Oh my God!
Yes, you know what?
Stuff.
Well, the government.
It goes even further. It's
Ultimate resources.
look, Asad Lavi when it says.
Remember the Club of Rome?
No, I didn't know this.
What do you think when the Rambam says Madanim Mutzim Ka'offer?
Oh, right.
So the literal is that we will be valuing spiritual, so it's like offer. Another explanation is that there'll just be abundance. You know, if all the wealth was spread equally, let's be honest, there wouldn't be any poverty in this world.
$50,000 per person in the United States.
Or even more, no one even knows how much wealth is hidden.
No, you do, of course you do.
They do now?
$67 trillion.
That's the reported income.
No, not even wealth.
Oh, okay.
67 trillion in the United States divided by 300 million people comes out to $250,000 or so per person. Family of four, $800 million of wealth right now existing in the United States without any new wealth being created.
So
every family would have $1 million in this country.
A year.
Let's
No,
redistribute
wealth.
it.
Yeah.
Not income. We're not talking about income. We're talking wealth. $1 million in your savings, which would produce at 7%, $70,000. 5%, $50,000.
Go Marxist and just redistribute.
No, God forbid Marxist.
Take it and redistribute.
Marxist is the Egel Zahav. It's not.
No, but I wanted to say was that when you look at this, it's you don't need anything today. Science, everybody understands. Look, I just read an article where they can basically create. A guy writes an article that it actually can create, without magic, can create invisibility.
I know that.
Okay,
I saw that. It's
hold on.
amazing
The
stuff.
challenge is to sustain it. You see,
They bend light. We're talking about this light.
right? Bending light, exactly.
You heard about this? No.
Yeah.
It's amazing. They have
Well, bending light. If light is bent and it turns red, it can make things invisible. The problem that the biggest challenge, the challenge science has is not that it could be done; it's sustainability, because there are factors that they don't have control over. But there's no one doubts that theoretically.
Yes.
Like for example, if you're able to go into the engine room,
Yes.
there's no doubt that you can. This is a common thing today.
The Rabbi once said about
No.
770.
But I will go. But I'll take it further.
The engine room of the yacht.
I don't know if they ever said that.
It was. I heard that.
We speakers use it. I don't think the Rebbe says it.
You don't ever say that?
We used to say that Rabbi Chadiko's room was the bunker room because it's like basically only one person can sit there.
I heard he said to.
Or two people.
I read about it. Maybe it's not true. They said to a person on a yacht that he came in and complained about how it didn't look so great.
That's the Maggid. That's a story with the Maggid.
He said, "Have you been in your boat? And what's the most important room in your ship?" And he said, "It's the engine room." And he said, "Have you ever been there?" He said, "Once when I bought the ship." And he said, "Have you ever? What's the engine room like?" Is it fun? He said, "No, but that's where the power comes from."
Okay, possible. It's possible. If there's a story, there's a story.
It was spoken about in some something, but not.
I don't know. Maybe
No, if you heard a story, I'm not going to say. Listen, it's not a crazy. It's a story that's believable. It's not like, let's put it this way. Yeah, I mean, say it's.
Especially the Rabbi was in naval engineering, so he talks about boats a lot, right?
Yeah. No, I just want to say the following. So what Chassidus talks about, I mean, the idea. Remember, from a Torah Chassidus point of view, matter is a davar neisef. Everything begins with energy, and energy begins with a source of energy, which is what we're discussing right now. So if you go from a mile lamata, from above down, it all begins from a source. Energy flows. We have the problem the other way around. How did energy become matter? We don't have a problem how matter becomes energy. How does energy become matter? It's far more complicated.
How energy becomes matter is more of an issue than how
Not how
matter
matter becomes
energy.
energy.
As long as you have matter, you know that there's something going on.
Yeah.
And you just have to release it.
No, so that's why. Listen, I think I have a very, very interesting. When you say so, Nesava Kadosh Baruch Hu, the desire of God wanted energy to become matter, and you have no other way to explain it. Because why would energy want to get dressed up in packages and veils and lock itself up when it's free, so to speak, and it's unlimited? Why would white light or clear light, transparent light, want to even go into garments? The only answer is because there's a reason, there's a purpose. The would be the reason. Here we're saying the Sat of Kadosh Baruch Hu, he wraps himself in a salma, in a shirt. Why is he wrapping himself? He doesn't need it. It's not cold. Because he has an existence that he wants to create. Because it has a purpose.
But it's connected to this idea, what the Rabbi just said here, that he wants to, the two levels of the sheath is Elohim now, and more refined.
Exactly, so that's where we're going. But Tachlis HaKavona Sheyeh B'chinas Islapshus Dafka. And the ultimate purpose is that should be manifest.
You understand? You learned algebra.
Yeah, I did.
So there's
Anyway,
matter and energy.
I'm continuing the parentheses.
I just learned that yesterday.
Okay. So now, basically the goal is that which was makif and seviv, beyond, transcendent, should become manifest and we should be aware of it. That's called halbasha. And to be unaware of it, that's what I was beginning to say, sounds that we don't hear, colors we don't see, that's not the goal. Now he's tying it all together. Remember I said chachma, why can't Kesser be enough Kesser and Malchus? Because chachma is wisdom. This is unbelievable stuff here. Because you know what chachma is? Chachma is the interface between the unconscious and the conscious. Right? Because it's the beginning of wisdom, but it's a colorless color. So it's in the world of colors, but it's colorless color. Malchus is completely devoid of anything, like Kesser. So chachma becomes v'zel ha'idei chachma. Those two ma'amorim. Because Eir Seif is transcendent energy, but I just said that invisible energy that's there but not manifest is not radiate in an internal way without a connection. And Chachma, because Chachma is bittul. When you think of an idea, a spark of an idea, is it manifest or it's not manifest? The truth is, like he says, between no color and color. Suddenly was nowhere. Suddenly you have an idea. It's like the minimum of expression. The minimum. Like we say Nakuda. Nakuda doesn't mean a point. It means, if it's expressed, it looks like a point. That's why it doesn't take room. You have no other way to express it but saying it's a point.
So is he saying that in the Chokhmah is mere the aura stoivet?
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's what he's saying. Because if you look back a chapter before, he said exactly that. Mm-hmm. That the ayin of Kesser is meir in Chokhmah. This is a critical component in all of Ayin Beis, all of Chassidus, frankly. Where Chokhmah meets, it always comes down to, where's that final circuit closed?
Last mile.
Yeah, that last mile. That's the hardest part.
The last mile.
And Chokhmah and Kesser, where they meet, is a very critical one. Later it's going to become Chokhmah Stamah, the unconscious Chokhmah. But that's a critical one. That's why Chabad is such a critical component. Because our mind, think what would we be like if we had no minds? What would be like? We'd be animals. We'd be creatures. We'd be sun and a moon. I mean by that is we would do what we have to do, because we would have feelings, emotions, and we'd be alive, but we wouldn't have the capacity of sumar menechem, raising our eyes and imagining something different than we are. An animal does not imagine, nor does it seek a better life. Lives in the same caves and so on. The human being, because we have spirit, because we have chokhmah, being a das, but Chabad starting from chokhmah, we have the ability to reach to the beyond. That's the key thing. So the mind, in its healthiest form, is essentially the portal to Bli Gvul. Without that, we couldn't even imagine Bli Gvul. At least now we could imagine. We still got plenty of challenges, because now bring it down into reality is another story. But at least you can dream it. If you couldn't dream it, you could definitely not access it. Yeah. Because Chachma is a state of Ayin. It's Takar Chachma, but it's a state of Ayin, like we said, chapter 118. This was critical, the end of 118. This was last chapter. What did he say? Actually, he said it in chapter 117. Oh yeah, 118. No. It's a 117. Okay, probably also 118. Let me just see. I don't think it's a 118. I think it's a 117. Now, 117 for sure. It says it at the end. You see, he says. You see that? Like 5 lines, 6, Yeah.
Right before the parentheses.
Yeah, right before the parentheses. I don't recall seeing it in chapter 118. Okay. It's fine. There to me, it's just one chapter right after the other. That the Havana is in 118. I'm just mentioning that. I'm just like maybe at the end. Okay, maybe at the end.
It's more than...
Yeah, the end. He does say it at the end, sorry. The end of 118, he says, Ayin. The Chacham begins Ha'er, Shu begins Gilim and Etzem, begins Ayin, and begins Pshita Shein Sham Gevin, Kim begins Gevin Pashat V'atzmi.
Is this a Kiddush? Because we say Chacham Me'ayin Kibbutz. Is this a Kiddush over in Rashad that it's Ayin Banish?
No, that's the Alter Rebbe. This is straight from the Alter Rebbe stuff. I mean, the explanations. Before he said it's Ayin, before he said a beautiful thing at the end of chapter 117, he said it's not Ayin and not Yesh. Mamish says those words.
Where at the end of 118?
Look at 10 lines from the top of 228, Reish Chav Ches.
228.
So he says V'yesh leim l'shazeh mashakosem Ayin Gevin l'Gevin. You see. Because the word there that Chachma takes from no color to color. So he explains, it's not pshitas, but there's no colors at all. Then he says, so let's look at this. So Kosav, he writes there, the Eina Kavana be Yesh Yeshus Hamusig. Amna Kavana be Milis Yesh behevla shebena Ayin Yesh lo Yeshus Gomur el Kesher la Ayin le Mechayev HaYesh Klal. In other words, it's like the seed. It's not really, it's nothingness. It's not nothingness, but it's not somethingness either. Yeah, it's unbelievable the levels that, wow. I'm telling you, I must say, this is coming to a point for me because I'm writing summaries and it's coming to the point because there's so much now. In the beginning you had like 5 ingredients. It's okay. Now you have 50,000 ingredients. I can't imagine how I'm going to carry this. I'm at the point of bursting, basically.
Yeah. You want to remember it all, and you want to.
Yeah, there's so much.
I've had so many flashes of insight today. I can't tell you.
Since the beginning, your chacham is open, huh? The channels. I said I think it's unbelievable. I mentioned sound was a good. I think sound is easier to relate to than sight because it's just for some reason. Like the flute example to me makes it very. God didn't make it that bli gvul jumps to gvul. You want soundlessness. First begins with a kel pashut, like a shofar, just a sound. Then add those holes and different winds, and it changes the sound, the fluctuations. Inflections is what I wanted. The inflections. The same thing with light. Light begins as that white light, like a projector. White light from a projector. Then you put a filter. And you reshape the color, then it becomes red, blue, green. It's just unbelievable examples in the physical world of literally what's the word I want to use? An interface, a portal that takes you from gvul sheba gvul, yesh sheba yesh, to a little more subtle, It's like almost, if I did it in an imagery, like on a video, I would take real strong, stark colors, slowly dull them, let them turn white, and how the white takes you into bli gvul. You don't think of it like that. So like no color at all becomes whitish, starts getting colors, and then you have our Metzias here. You follow? Yeah. Same thing with sound. So basically it's creating a bridge, an interface between color and white is the perfect example. White. We talk about clear or transparent. You get the imagery of it? Beautiful.
Connectors, I'm calling connectors also.
Yeah, but it changes things. It's like an edelkeit. You're going from grubkeit to edelkeit, basically. You're going from crassness to subtlety.
Connector makes it to the
yeah, and there's no way you can jump into the complete without. Basically, if you said a game, we could have a game. You start here. and climbing, and you got to do certain things. If you don't do enough tzedakah today, you can't come into Atzilus, my friends. You stop.
By the way,
That's a good
There you go. Donate now.
it's not the year. Don't lose that thought.
And Eliezer would like that. Okay.
This is important. Don't lose the thought for tomorrow. You all know about this massacre.
Yeah.
So my son, from Houston.
It shook everybody up.
It's not about gun control. It's about education.
Right. It's about
And then it
gun.
came out. My wife was reading to me.
About education?
Wait a
Yeah, I
minute.
said that in the morning.
That the guy was steeped in these violent video games. Games for good. For tomorrow. For our, video.
Was he?
Violence is the norm.
Was he?
Not in their lives.
Was he mentally disturbed?
Obviously, anybody that does that.
No.
Come on.
He's a genius.
No. The question is whether.
Games for good.
No. But video games, enough of them, and you're bored. Can you lose?
Rewire your wiring.
You have no anchor. You have no brain. You have no God in your life. So.
I mean, people are killed in the name of God.
You probably know
God
the
is a
secret.
critical issue
The
there.
secret that the Rabbi spoke on.
You're going back to Berkeley. We're slowly cutting out all his fanaticism. This guy's going to end up being anti-Mashiach soon.
Rabbi Jacobson, I got to tell you something. Very fascinating. One of the lights that went on here is that I'm reading the history of very important. I was reading the biography of Albert Einstein.
Also Isaacson writes it.
Isaacson wrote it.
Yeah.
He wrote 3.
Lincoln, right? Franklin.
That's a moderate.
Well, he was a born
It's not
guy,
so
wasn't he,
great,
Franklin?
but Albert Einstein's another great one. Let me just say something. He's such a detail. He goes into every year in the actual mind of what Albert Einstein's going through. It's incredible. But the original famous equation that Albert just showed me, E equals mc squared.
Right.
Energy equals the speed of light squared.
Right.
Matter times
What was the first equation that he wrote in 1907? It wasn't that.
It was
He changed it to that.
It was a special theory of relativity.
No, it was that special theory of relativity going to the general theory of
Right.
relativity. But this equation, it was the first time he actually wrote it was L equals mv squared. L being light. So you know how you type or
Matter
as
times
energy?
velocity?
He changed light to
I know, that's why I use
You
energy.
knew that? You knew that in his equation that he changed it in 1950?
I didn't know that particular.
Speed for velocity?
Velocity.
When you speed up matter, you
I
get
don't know
light?
if it
Is that what
was
it says?
velocity.
Listen, I'm not gonna. I'm by no means
Energy
a.
is light. That was Albert Einstein changed E is light to energy.
Why do you think I use energy?
We're talking about energy all the time. So
But
there's a perfect. If somebody ever asks you, Rabbi, it says or, how come you keep translating it as energy? You can say this famous story. Do you know that the original E equals mc squared? Albert Einstein.
I always instinctively, by the way, knew it was energy, not light, because light is meaningless. Light is we associate light with
We talk about
light
all the
bulbs.
time. We don't use the word koach and all the Hasidics is or.
I know everyone translates light. People ask me why I keep saying energy, but it's definitely because Or, Chayas, and Koyach. It sounds more like Or is light and Chayas is energy. But the truth is, it's the deeper. Because you're not sure, is it divine light that comes out of Atzmos or divine energy that's coming out of it? What do you mean light? What light? What does light mean? Light is not illuminating anything. Because energy is the most accurate form of transmission.
Wait, but the Arizal was the one who called it or. So there's something that's in there.
No, but who says Or is light?
Well.
No, that's the point. I'm not. No.
It's a Hebrew word meaning light, isn't it?
No, not necessarily. No, one second. Why do you say that? Hold on. No. One minute.
I'm ignorant of the Hebrew language.
No, but it says he or v'yosh.
Yeah, what does that mean here?
Obviously, that's the or is the opposite of kosher.
Like it's not the sun or the moon. There was no light then. What was the Or? Tell me what means the Or.
It is energy because
It's energy, for sure it's energy. It's revelation, if you want to really, it's revelation, if you want to put it.
Why didn't the Arizal call it Chayas Asoyde or Chayas Anomal?
First of all, the Rizal, don't blame it on the Rizal. Okay. First, it's in Chumash, number one. It's in Chumash. Secondly, it's in Zohar. The word Nahira. Even the word Zohar itself means illumination. The words are used far, far earlier. When Chassidus talks about why it's not Shefa, that's the question. Why is the expression of divine not Shefa?
That's when they were.
Yeah.
Which is flow of energy, by the way.
The Rizal primarily used not Shefa, as other Mukabalim, So Shefa flow because Shefa represents more of a substance. All the different reasons. We learned about it too. And air is less substanceless. In other words, a good example for divine energy is light. That's how I would explain it. Not that light, it's light. Example to understand energy, divine energy. You see, another problem with light is, as I always say, it doesn't help people grow. You bring back the idea to the mashal. Light is only good for us to understand it. But what you're really talking about is divine expression. That's what you really mean. Divine expression. That's the real correct word. I don't use air expression because that would be a little too radical for some. But the truth is divine expression or divine manifestation or divine consciousness or divine revelation far better than light. But you need words. Listen, there's nothing wrong when you're learning. The first thing I've seen on the best teachers, whether it was Feynman in physics or the guys in literature or this, they always begin their first course. They insist their students must deal with language first. Every contract. What is a contract? What's the first paragraph in a contract? The language.
Right.
What term means what? Because you don't have that, and don't. People think it's meaningless. It's critical. I can tell you right now, when I teach and speak, I know language is everything. 90% of the communication is language. I say one thing, people can go away after an hour and they think I meant something else. I've seen this. I've tested it. Language is critical, especially when you talk about invisible things. A table, okay, we're all talking about the same table. But as soon as you go into the world of energy or the world of beneath, what word do you use? How even the word unconscious. I'm very, some say, why don't I use subconscious? Because I've tested it with people. What do they think unconscious means? What do they think subconscious means? These are all words. Words are meaningless. Words are meaningless until you explain what your word means, which is also a catch-22.
Can I hear you just said?
No, but let me just say one thing I was going to say. Words. Oh, so yeah. But I didn't. Listen. I did a lot of when I was in my younger years. I did a lot of studying of physics. I'm pretty good in physics. I know my physics. That's why a lot of this is a lot of stuff in Chassidus is very, very aligned with physics. I mean, I'm by no means a master physicist, but I can carry my weight on it, and there's a lot of stuff that's very, very similar. Very. I tell what I would really like it to happen is to work with a physicist, met that guy from Rostov, that can take this to another level. You see, I don't think I have the capacity to take an idea and come up with a Nobel Prize paper of radical new theory in physics, but I have no doubt that it's doable. Because physics is all about stretching imagination. Einstein, what he did, he just stretched places people didn't go before. But had someone learned Chassidus and knew physics, for them energy, for the ideas that matter and energy is baby talk. It's the most basic. So I have no doubt, deep Chassidus can take physics to another place. That's when you'll have the biggest Kiddush Hashem, I think.
So can we have?
From my point of view, if you can influence,
Chassidus for physicists.
100%. No, I'll tell you something else. One second, Eliezer.
For physicists.
Let me go further. I don't know if listen. The word Chassidus may not speak to them, so you need to know.
I'm getting too excited.
We are in it. So what? Now you'll know what it feels like. I'm always on this. Let me tell you something. One of the things I did with the Ayin Beis website, I have an Ayin Beis website which I continuously build based on what we're. I have a whole section called Parallels. My goal was to send it out. I even spoke to that guy when you brought him. To every scientist I know, people, because I would begin, the low-hanging fruit again. And just simply, here's an idea in Ayin Beis, like here's an idea of colors. Which school of science really knows this stuff in science? Tell me what you think. And I don't care if they find contradiction. Let them say there's a different theory. But engage a conversation about it, and trust me, I guarantee you there'll be new things that will literally be, the world only values people with degrees. You and I came up with a complete radical theory, and you don't got the degree, the arrogance that they have, they won't accept it even as true as it is. That's why those rare occasions where some where a guy genius in India comes up with something, mathematical equations, they didn't respect it until it was just impossible to deny that there was some real new stuff there. Yeah. Now, but Albert did have.
He worked in a patent office. He couldn't get a job.
I know. Now, my point is, you want to talk about Mashiach? Because all you need is one such breakthrough, and people will not be able to deny it. One breakthrough, that an idea from Torah and Chassidus, and it's going to come from Chassidus, can revolutionize a concept that it becomes the basis of a new technology. Tell me something, one act that can do more than that. Because then they'll say, what else is in there? What else do these guys have?
Yes. And that was how Albert got his notoriety, because he kept, after all his proofs, he'd always suggest an experiment to prove what he just said. And the famous one that proved his whole thing was the bending of light. An astronomer actually observed that light did change. You know that they waited 5 years until they proved the bending of the light.
Yeah, so what I'm saying basically is, this is one of the reasons. I mean, I like learning it, and for the many benefits.
Yeah.
But one of the big things to me is to get this out there in some English form where it could be shown to people like that, and get some action going. It's not impossible to do, because we have a good school of 20, 30 scientists that are legitimate scientists that would engage in such a discussion. I've spoken myself to several, and they said that they'd be love to do it. My Maish Mechutin is the Small from Mitch Small. He's the head of the top of what's it called? Mitch Small from Pittsburgh. It's Baal Tshuva. His daughter married my son. He's I think the Einstein seat in Carnegie Mellon.
He's at Carnegie Mellon?
Carnegie Mellon, he's a chair. Not only a chair, he's the head of a department.
If you had said University of Pittsburgh.
No, but head of a department. When he became head of the department, he's such a humble guy. He didn't even tell anybody. They found out, and some people came.
He's a physicist?
He's not physicist. He's engineering, not social engineering. What is it called?
So all these guys were excited. So why didn't you do it?
What's his name?
No, because I didn't get it to them until I got the right summaries. It's really technical.
Rabbi, what's your name?
Mitch Small, great guy. Chassidish guy. He goes. He sings to. He dances to his own beat. A very, very good guy. There's a few guys like this. A guy like what's his name in Dayton? Klatzen, Shmuel Klatzen. Another.
In Dayton, Ohio.
Brilliant literature, history, science. He's one of these. All of them. They got their scientists plus acid droppers, and now they're chassidus. Okay, so they seen. They have their Steve Jobs plus.
Yes.
Okay. He's gonna write that down. I know he's gonna write that. I don't know where these notes go. I hope you don't just flush them down or something.
I got to tell you something though, and I need your feedback on something. I had an important insight here that I need your comment. Maybe it's dus or not. But you just said that Chachma is the key because it brings down the inaccessible Kesser into our system, integrated interface, right?
Well said.
So
I like when it's resaid in different words, by the way. You said it in your own words, which is very good.
Chabad is Chachma Bina Das, but how do we always translate it in English?
Wisdom, not understanding, and knowledge, which means nothing.
No, but wisdom is really a very incorrect and misleading, I think, translation of the word Chachma. Why? When wisdom...
Yeah, I agree, because it's a body of wisdom. You think it's a body of wisdom.
Translation of Chachma into... Because why? What wisdom? Because wisdom requires a process of integration. Wisdom. A previously acquired knowledge. That's wisdom of somebody who's wise.
You got it right on target.
That's a wise person. He takes life experience and he gets.
And more than that, Eliezer, one second.
Insight, Chachma, is that for insight refers to that first flash of connection between the infinite and the insight. The word is insight. The word should not be wisdom. It should be insight.
I can't agree with you more.
Inside.
Even worse. Wisdom also refers to a body of wisdom. Anyone asks wisdom, they'll say, okay, there's a body of wisdom I have to go find.
Right.
That's not at all. It's about a link to a place that nobody has yet conceived. The conception is sometimes the best word, because it's conceiving of an idea.
Conception.
Like insight. It's like a flash. A flash is the conception. It is actually, by the way, conception. Being is the mother. Mother is that carries it.
You ever read the book, Stroke of Insight? Did you read it?
Which one?
My Stroke of Insight?
No.
You have to read it.
Yeah, my wife is reading it now.
Have you read it? You've heard the whole book?
I saw it. No, I didn't read it. My wife is reading it now.
From person?
No, not. The more from, trust me, the less spiritual.
I told you, I don't read anything from principle from Harvard.
Because
He prints it something. By Stroke of Insight?
It's what's her name? The neuroscientist that had that. She had a stroke.
Who had a stroke?
Oh, yeah.
TED, brilliant.
I read it on TED.
You read it on TED.
Yeah, but it's a whole book now. It's an entire book.
He's interviewed by
It's a good one, huh? It's mamash. The field of energy, mind blowing. The
If
achdus,
you're looking for...
right? The achdus.
yes.
Yeah.
Remember the toothbrush.
By the way,
She can't take her toothbrush.
Like these kinds of
Einstein, ultimately, after he got both general theory of relativity, he said he would spend the rest of his life looking for the unified field theory.
Right.
And the Rebbe says, I saw it written somewhere, the Rebbe says his search for the unified field theory is the search for God.
You know what I find interesting is the
Search for the unified field
You know what
theory
they
is
call
God.
what they're looking
Hashem
for?
is all. Alt is God. Ain o milvado.
I have a theory myself on this,
And that's so beyond
Can we
that.
finish it there?
but this I'll share when I win a Nobel Prize.
Albert Einstein plus. Einstein plus. The unified field.
That sounds like a power drink.
Einstein's a dinosaur already.
What about a power drink?
He's not.
Huh.
He was into quantum mechanics, by the way.
Anyway,
He had problems with quantum mechanics. Improbably, he says God doesn't play dice, doesn't throw dice, right? Doesn't play dice with you. That's what he said. He says God doesn't play dice with the universe. And Niels Bohr, another Jew, said to him, "Don't tell God what to do." You ever heard this one?
Yeah. I've heard it, but I don't know if it's. I haven't finished the book yet.
Okay. Anyway, so let's finish the chapter. Let's finish, then we can. One second. So Chochma begins Ayin u'kanal perik ukufitches. V'kol she'eshu came begins ha'er. So if Chochma is this way, for sure Er is in this way. He's talking here about the tachas that should become islapshus. So if Chochma is a Ayin, that's a keli. So Er is for sure. Uliyashu begins mitzias Er al kapanim u'kanal shu begins levush. And being that it's at least a mitzias, something exists, like we said before, it's a garment. But what type of garment? We're talking now a garment that reveals. That's why through it you can say it reveals, it's transparent, that reveals the Era Sev of Kalam. The Er Atzmi, the core energy, which is the transcendent energy. Look later what we discussed between energy and power. And specifically, according to what's explained in this drush, he says this many, many times, that in Eir there's also 10 spheres. Which means that's more mitzias. So Eir has in it this dual property, that's paradoxical properties. On one hand, it's a garment, on the other hand, it's a transparent garment. So it becomes the primi that reveals the Havaya de La'ela. So Lakim is Kalim. Er is Havaya dilatata, and it reveals Havaya the save of Kalam. What it means, and what we're speaking here, if you remember, we're speaking again like this. Helam is a world that's concealed. Malchus is completely concealed. You reveal and connect it to the beginnings of its source. Then you connect Er Gvul, you connect the energy. The containers reveal energy. Which energy? They first reveal the finite energy, the energy of the artist in the art. Okay? Then they reveal Bligvul energy, the artist that has infinite possibilities. So Eir HaGvul, basically when God envisioned and allocated and estimated how much power Shir Asmi B'Koyach, that leads you back into Bligvul. So basically he's saying Eir HaGvul leads you to Eir HaBligvul. That's what he's saying. The energy, as it manifests in creation and existence, leads you back, is a transparent channel, that's Behirus that he's saying, to the Bligvul. You see he's getting to spheres in Bligvul soon. You understand? That's what's going on here. It's unbelievable. That achiv, expand the space of your tent, of your harchivi. Harchivi means I will harchivi. Expand for me. Expand for me the place of your halach, meaning your place is a certain. Makam halach is like Beis Hamikdash, basically the place where you rest. Oil. The gam b'chinas hamalchus. You see, malchus. That even the level of malchus, makam halach, even the lowest level, there should be the revelation of merchav ha'atzmi, harchava. That's harchivi. Merchav ha'atzmi means the core, the essential and core expansion. The Ein Sof. Like we say, min ha'meitzer karasiyah. Anani ba merchav, from narrow to merchav, to expansive. The Yerushalayim will sit open, without the walls of confinement. And what will be the wall then? It will be a wall of fire. So what today is a wall, a lakim, that's concealing, then it will be open, And
fire is a barrier. I mean, you can't walk through fire. You can't see through fire.
But it's considered to be a revelation in the levels of Elokus. You know, like the story of the Rebbe Rashab. When fire touches fire, it doesn't get burnt. So that's how you have to see it. And nevertheless, it'll be a slapshus. It'll be in Mokim Melech. It will be in the space. It won't be just going into Blikvul and losing the parameters of existence. And that's what it means that it'll be is the words of Yaakov, right? Where right after he says the Evan Hazeh will be Beis Elokim.
He'll bring me the peace, and he'll bring me the peace.
So it's mamish continues here. So it's mamish a continuation. So Malchus, he elevates Malchus, and then it comes back down into Tzias. Wow. So he goes to Pnimis HaKeser, Gvul, Teferes, and brings it back into Gvul, to the point where the Gvul now is a keli for the Blikvul. Wow. Man alive. There's such interfaces going on here. I can't remember how many interfaces. I'm like going crazy from this. And this is through the revelation comes through the lower Shem Havaya, that's the imminent energy. I don't know if he's adding anything. He's basically summing up that the Atzmi, the core energy, should also come in a midah v'shir, in a measurement and parameters. Now, a form of islapshus, manifestation. Well, Kamoi b'teira mitzvahs achshav is giving now example in the parentheses, like teira mitzvahs today, shem b'chinas atzma sein sof. They come from the core infinite. So teira mitzvahs today is a taste of this. That's why he brings Mashiach. Like you said before, the taste of Matan Teira, Beis HaMikdash, beginning of creation, Yaakov. It's all a taste of this. Now, what do you have? Torah mitzvahs is in addition, is something bringing into existence more. Remember, we said there's the amount of energy that enters into the world that just keeps things alive. You know, maintenance mode. It keeps things afloat. You want an additional, you need abundant energy. You need a flow, a surge. So Torah mitzvahs brings from Atzma Sein Sof, but it's all midah v'shir. Torah mitzvahs is all with measurements.
You don't taste it at all. Today it's all the hell.
One second. The only thing with Torah mitzvahs is a divine revelation from a higher place.
But you don't taste it.
But it's all measured. It's all in measurements. Yeah. Every mitzvah has parameters. Right. You do it by morning, by day. Right. He's giving an example where Blikvul is coming into Gvul.
You're right.
Yeah.
Why does he say the next part?
One second, that's it. But one second. Except Torah mitzvahs today, it's in general terms. It's only we grasp that because it's not revealed. You don't see it. The world is goes. It's not revealed in the full sense of the word. That's why we want Mashiach. Like it says in Tanya at the end of chapter 4. Look what he says later, Perek Kuf Pei, 180. What is he saying? We just learned it in Chitas a few days ago. He says that it's all in Levushim. You still grasp the king. He says Levushim, it's the king himself, but right. Yeah, but at the end of the day, but however, even though it's concealed, he's concealed in the layers, but it's the actual king. But he's talking here the emphasis on the layers that's concealed. Interesting that he brings from Tanya. Why doesn't he bring from Perek Lamed Vav? Because Perek Lamed Vav he also says, because Perek Lamed Vav is the opposite. Teira there is Eis Lamed Yitin, God gives the power. Yeah, I understand. Right. But there he also says that Torah gives the power, because this is the opposite. There he says Torah gives the power for us to contain it. In Perek Lamed Vav, because Lamed Vav is already talking about Mashiach coming. Gilead and stuff, that will be L'asad Lavei, so in Torah was a taste of it, because it gives the power for us to contain the infinite. Here he says, right, the etzem, but it's not revealed, so both sides. Which means when you learn the halacha, this is what it says in Tanya there. When you learn the halacha in Torah, like he says, even if you didn't, the fact that God said, if such a situation, Reuven says so to Shimon, Shimon says this, and the halacha is like this, by learning God's wisdom, you've now grasped and contained with the wisdom of God, because he said that's how it is. It's an unbelievable taich how you learn Torah.
It's an unbelievable thing because all the other contemporaries of the Alter Rebbe
Wisdom of
never had
God?
this.
Chachmeilah, the higher wisdom, the supernal
They
wisdom.
said that if you learn Torah, you connect with Hashem. But the Alter Rebbe says no. You're learning godliness itself.
But it doesn't yet radiate and illuminate in a revealed mamish way, in a literal revealed way. Only a reflection of this when the knowledge of Pnimis HaTorah. When we learn inner Torah, that doesn't say in tiny there, by the way. That says in Kunter Sachem. But it's interesting, he's adding, to Pnimis HaTorah you get a reflection of it. Because in Nigla, when you learn Reuven Shimon, so all you're doing is you are connecting to God's wisdom, but you don't see the divine in it. You just know it's that. It's concealed. In Pnimis HaTorah you begin to recognize the divine. And similar to this is the souls in Gan Eden. Shenanim meziv terosim vavidosam, that nanim, they appreciate, they enjoy from the reflection of Torah, and their work b'chinas hasog in a comprehensible way. And the future will be mamish revealed, literally. Aval gili b'chinas etzem ha'er mamish. Now it goes outside the parentheses. But the gili, even though it manifests in a contained way, integrated, it'll be etzem ha'er mamish, literally the core light. V'hainu l'fisha gili al yidei shem havaya, shu b'chinas levush er, because the revelation comes to havaya, which is a levush er, it's a garment of light, like kosnas er, not with the ayin, with the aleph.
Right.
That the garment is of light, so it's a transparent garment, shemagalas etzem, that reveals the core. V'zeyim b'chinas sfiras u'bihirus, and that's the level of sfiras and behiras that it illuminates, that it's bright. So we find for this that the primary name Sfira as behiras is Eir. Number was primarily containers. Story was in between. And this is now primarily Eir because it's primarily revealing.
What's a shem?
Shame. Yeah. Let's read the Kitzur. V'zeyin Sfiras u'behiras. This is Sfiras and behiras, bright illuminators. The Eru b'chinas levush l'gabe etzem, because the energy is a garment compared to the core. V'hu levush eir, it's a garment of light. L'kumeshel osad yi havaya l'kim, ha'inu sheyi al-gil l'shem havaya l'el al-yeshem havaya l'tata. Like l'osad will be havaya will be al-kim, which means that the revelation of the higher havaya, the bligvul, seviv, will be through the lower havaya, via gilia eir b'chinas islam. It will be the revelation of the energy of b'chinas islavchus pnim megam b'chinas malchus, and integrated internally, even on the level of malchus. Like through Torah mitzvahs today, which is concealed, in the future will be revealed. And according to this, behiras, brightness is in the energy. Okay, so we did chapter 119, page 230, 231.